The torches of the royal palace still burn. The sound of music and drunken voices drifts through the corridors of glazed brick. Outside, in the darkness, the Euphrates River runs strangely low, and no one notices. In a few hours, the greatest empire on earth will cease to exist. We are in Babylon, capital of the known world, on an October night in the year 539 BC. What happens here tonight will forever change the map of human power and fulfill a prophecy recorded decades earlier. The night air carries the scent of incense burned on altars. The colossal walls, the largest ever built by human hands, encircle the city like the arms of a sleeping giant. Within them, 1 million inhabitants sleep, eat, and celebrate, completely oblivious to the army approaching through the dry riverbed. King Nabonidus is absent, in Timah, in Arabia. His son Belshazzar rules in his place, and on this specific night hosts a banquet for 1,000 of his nobles. The bronze gates are closed. Sentinels watch the walls. Babylon is impregnable. Babylon is eternal. Babylon has hours to live. Before we begin, write in the comments where you are watching from. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the bell. We continue. To understand what is about to happen, one must first see what Babylon was. Not the city of legends, but the real city of stone, brick, and river, which modern archaeology has unearthed and ancient sources described with awe. The camera pulls back in time and space. It is morning in Babylon, a few hours before the fatal banquet. The sun rises over the Mesopotamian plain, that strip of land between two rivers that the Greeks would call the cradle of civilization. The golden light first touches the tallest structures, the ziggurat of Etemenanke, the stepped tower dedicated to the god Marduk, which the Hebrews would identify as the Tower of Babel. It consists of 7 stories of baked brick, covered in glazed blue tiles, rising 90 meters toward the Mesopotamian sky. At the top, a temple covered in gold where, according to Herodotus, a priestess awaited the nightly visit of the god himself. Excavations led by the German archaeologist Robert Koldewey between 1899 and 1917 revealed the exact foundations of this structure. The ziggurat occupied an area of 91 square meters at the base. The bricks found still bear cuneiform inscriptions with the name of Nebuchadnezzar II, the king who rebuilt Babylon to its maximum splendor, the same king who destroyed Jerusalem and led the Jews into exile decades earlier. The camera descends through the city streets. Babylon is organized in a precise grid, something rare in the ancient world. The processional way, called Ibo Shabu in Akkadian, the enemy shall never pass, cuts through the city from north to south. The pavement is made of white and red limestone slabs, each inscribed with dedications to Marduk. The walls lining this road are covered in lapis lazuli blue glazed bricks, decorated with relief figures of marching lions, 60 on each side, representing Ishtar, the goddess of love and war. These lions were recovered and are now in the Pergamon Museum in Berlin. Those who see them can touch the same surface that Babylonians touched 2,500 years ago. The Ishtar Gate dominates the northern entrance of the processional way. It is a massive structure of blue bricks, decorated with dragons and bulls in relief, symbols of Marduk and Adad. It stands 14 meters high. It is through this gate that the gods entered in procession during the Akitu festival, the Babylonian New Year. It is also through this gate that, in theory, no invading army would ever pass. The walls extending from it are double, an outer wall 7 meters thick and an inner wall 6.5 meters thick, separated by a moat filled with water from the Euphrates. Watchtowers dot the perimeter every 50 meters. Herodotus, who visited the city about 80 years after this night, recorded that the walls were 85 kilometers in circumference, an exaggeration according to archaeologists, but indicative of the awe they inspired. The camera crosses the river. The Euphrates does not bypass Babylon, it flows through it, dividing it into 2 halves connected by a stone bridge on brick pillars. The river is the city's vital artery. It provides water for drinking, irrigation for the surrounding fields, and transport for goods arriving from across the empire. Cargo ships dock at the wharves along the banks. Fishermen cast nets into the muddy waters. Women wash clothes on the stone steps leading down to the shore. No one imagines that this same river, this source of life, will be the channel of destruction. On the west bank, the Hanging Gardens, if they truly existed in Babylon and not in Nineveh, as some modern scholars suggest, rise in green terraces over brick structures. Exotic plants from all regions of the empire grow in beds irrigated by a system of Archimedes screws that pump water from the river to the upper levels. Tradition says that Nebuchadnezzar II built these gardens for his Median wife, Amytis, who missed the green hills of her homeland. Whether truth or legend, the gardens represent the power of Babylon, a city capable of making an oasis bloom in the middle of the desert. The royal palace occupies the area between the Ishtar Gate and the river. It is a complex of courtyards, audience halls, royal chambers, and storehouses covering more than 50,000 square meters. The walls are decorated with glazed bricks forming geometric and floral patterns in blue, yellow, white, and black. The throne room, where Belshazzar hosts his banquet tonight, measures 52 meters long by 17 meters wide. The walls display lions, stylized palm trees, and rosettes, motifs that archaeologists documented in fragments recovered from the site. It is in this room that, according to the book of Daniel, a hand will appear writing words on the wall. It is in this room that the destiny of the empire will be sealed. The camera rises again, offering an aerial view. Babylon stretches over more than 1,000 hectares of urban area. Temples dedicated to dozens of deities dot the neighborhoods. The Temple of Marduk, the Esagila, is the religious center of the Mesopotamian world, so sacred that even conquering kings felt obliged to pay homage there to legitimize their power. The streets bustle with merchants, artisans, scribes, priests, slaves, and soldiers. One hears Aramaic, the lingua franca of the empire, mixed with official Akkadian, the Persian of visitors, and the Hebrew of the exiles. It smells of bread baking in the bakeries, beer fermenting in the taverns, donkey dung in the side streets, and incense on the altars. The exiled Jews live in communities around the city. It has been over 40 years since they were brought from Jerusalem after the destruction of the temple by Nebuchadnezzar. Some prospered, becoming merchants and even royal advisors. The prophet Daniel, according to the biblical text, served in the court of 3 Babylonian kings and now serves under Belshazzar. Tonight, he will be called to the palace to decipher a message that no Babylonian wise man can read. Other exiles keep their faith in secret, awaiting the fulfillment of the prophecies of Jeremiah, who promised that Babylon would fall after 70 years. We are in the 67th year of the exile. The countdown is nearing its end. The sun crosses the Babylonian sky. In the streets, life follows its millennial rhythm. Vendors hawk their wares in the markets. Scribes draft contracts on clay tablets that will be baked and archived. Some of these tablets survive to this day, documenting property sales, loans with interest, and legal disputes. Women weave at their looms. Children play in the alleys. Astrologers consult the stars, seeking omens. Babylonian astronomy is the most advanced in the ancient world, capable of predicting eclipses with mathematical precision. But no omen announces what is to come. On the east bank of the river outside the walls, Persian military camps wait in silence. The army of Cyrus II, called the Great by history, has surrounded Babylon for months. There are tens of thousands of soldiers, Persians, Medes, and contingents of conquered peoples. But the walls are impenetrable. The supplies inside the city can last for years. Babylon has resisted sieges before. Conventional strategy will not work. Cyrus, however, does not plan a conventional strategy. According to Herodotus and Xenophon, Greek historians who recorded the event decades later, Cyrus ordered his engineers to dig canals to divert the course of the Euphrates. The water that normally filled the riverbed and the defensive moats is being diverted to plains and marshes miles away. The river level drops gradually. No one in Babylon notices. The sentinels on the walls look toward the desert, toward the roads, toward the enemy camps in the distance. They do not look at the river beneath their feet. The sun sets over Mesopotamia. The temperature drops rapidly in the dry desert air. Torches are lit in the streets and temples. In the royal palace, preparations for Belshazzar's banquet are complete. 1,000 nobles have been invited. Musicians tune their lyres and harps. Servants carry jars of wine and trays of fruit. Concubines adorn themselves with jewelry and perfumes. The young king, Belshazzar, is the son of Nabonidus and rules as regent in his father's absence, decided to demonstrate Babylon's invincibility with a feast that no guest will forget. He is right. No one will forget this night. The biblical text in Daniel chapter 5 records what happens next with precise detail. The banquet begins. Wine flows abundantly. Belshazzar, in his alcoholic enthusiasm, orders that the sacred vessels Nebuchadnezzar plundered from the Temple of Jerusalem decades earlier be brought. They are gold and silver chalices, ritual vessels, objects that the Israelite priests used for offerings to the God of Israel. Belshazzar and his nobles drink wine from these sacred vessels, toasting to the gods of Babylon, to Marduk, to Nebo, to Ishtar, to gods of gold and silver, of bronze and iron, of wood and stone. Outside the walls, the river level continues to fall. The Persian soldiers wait in silence. Cyrus has set the moment. When the water is low enough for a man to cross without it reaching his chest, the advance will begin. Elite groups are positioned on both sides of the river, where it enters and leaves the city. The iron grates that normally block the passage under the walls, installed precisely to prevent an invasion by water, will be useless when the river recedes. The Babylonians trusted too much in their engineering. Inside the throne room, the party reaches its climax. The sound of conversation, laughter, and music fills the space. Braziers scatter heat and light. The smell of spilled wine and abundant food saturates the air. The faces of the nobles are flushed with alcohol. Jewelry glitters in the firelight. Fine linen and imported silk garments rustle with every movement. And then, according to the biblical account, something happens that silences the entire room. A hand appears. Not an arm, not a body. Just a hand, human fingers, writing on the white plaster wall of the room, next to the lampstand where the light is strongest. The words that appear are strange, in characters that no one recognizes or understands. Belshazzar's face changes color, his joints loosen, his knees knock against each other. The biblical text is clinical in its description of this terror. It is not common fear, it is physical collapse before the supernatural. The wise men are called diviners, Chaldeans, astrologers, all the specialists that Babylon accumulated over centuries of intellectual supremacy. None can read the inscription, none can interpret it. The Queen Mother, possibly Nitocris, daughter of Nebuchadnezzar, enters the room and remembers that there is a man in the kingdom capable of deciphering mysteries. Daniel, the Hebrew, who served under previous kings. Daniel is brought before the king. The biblical text records that he refuses the offered rewards, purple clothing, a gold chain, the third place in the kingdom, before giving his interpretation. The words on the wall are Aramaic, mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. Daniel translates them. Mene means numbered. God has numbered the days of Belshazzar's kingdom and finished it. Tekel means weighed. The king has been weighed in the balance and found wanting. Peres, the singular form of upharsin, means divided. The kingdom will be divided and given to the Medes and Persians. There is also a play on words in Peres, which sounds like paras, the word for Persia. The prophecy is immediate. There is no time for repentance, nor for preparation, nor for defense. What Daniel announces will happen that very night. The camera leaves the palace. It crosses the now dark streets of Babylon. It passes the temples where priests still burn nightly incense. It descends to the river. The Euphrates is low, strangely low. Boats stranded on the banks are shadows in the dark. Fish jump in shallow puddles where there was once depth. The riverbed, which would normally have 2 meters or more of water, now barely reaches a man's waist. The Persian soldiers enter the water. They are silent, efficient, trained. They advance in a line, holding their weapons above their heads to keep them dry. The weak current barely pushes them. They pass under the grates meant to stop them, grates designed to block boats, not men walking along the bottom. They emerge inside the walls of Babylon, the impenetrable city, the city that would never fall. The irony is brutal. The most sophisticated defenses of the ancient world are neutralized not by superior force, but by hydraulic engineering. The Babylonians who mastered the rivers to build their empire are defeated by someone who mastered the rivers better than they did. The Persians split into groups. Some advance toward the inner walls to open the gates from the inside out. Others head directly for the palace. Most Babylonians still do not know what is happening. The guards on the walls look outward, toward the empty desert, toward the distant camps. They do not look back. They do not look down. Herodotus records that, due to the immense size of the city, when the extremities were taken, the inhabitants of the center still did not know they had been conquered. The party in the palace continued. The music still played. The cups were still being filled. Babylon was falling while its rulers toasted. The camera returns to the throne room. Belshazzar is still there, perhaps still processing Daniel's words, perhaps already trying to organize some late defense. The biblical text is concise about what happens next. That very night Belshazzar, king of the Chaldeans, was slain. The doors burst open. Persian soldiers enter. There are screams, confusion, the sound of metal against metal. Wine cups fall and shatter on the floor. Drunken nobles try to flee or hide. Torches flicker with the violent movement. Blood stains the glazed bricks, the imported rugs, the fine linen robes. The great empire that dominated the known world for nearly a century ends in a single night, in a single room, while the echoes of the party still resonate in the halls. Babylon falls. What happens in the following hours defies expectations. There is no mass looting. There is no destruction. There is no general massacre. The Cyrus Cylinder, a clay document discovered in 1879 and now in the British Museum, records the official Persian version of events. Cyrus presents himself not as a foreign conqueror, but as a liberator sent by Marduk, Babylon's own patron god. According to the inscription, the people of Babylon received him with joy. Nabonidus, the absent king, was later captured without significant resistance. The exiled Jews see in these events the fulfillment of prophecies. Isaiah, writing more than a century earlier, had named Cyrus as the Lord's anointed who would free Israel. Jeremiah had promised a return after 70 years. Cyrus's decree, recorded both on the cylinder and in the book of Ezra, will allow the Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple. The Babylonian exile ends on the same night that Babylon ends. The sun rises over a transformed city. The walls are still standing, the temples still dominate the horizon, the ziggurat still points toward the sky. But power has changed hands. Persian banners flutter where Babylonian ones once did. Orders now come in Persian, translated into Aramaic. The empire that humbled nations, that destroyed Jerusalem, that dragged chained kings through its streets in triumphal parades, now belongs to another people, serves another king, bows to another god. The significance of this event reverberates through the centuries. For historians, it represents the transition from Mesopotamian dominance to Persian dominance in the Middle East, a shift that will set the stage for Alexander, for Rome, and for the modern world. For Jews, it represents the first of their returns from exile, the beginning of the restoration promised by the prophets. For Christians who will read Daniel centuries later, it represents a confirmation that earthly empires are transitory, weighed in the divine balance, and found wanting. Babylon was not destroyed that night. The city continued to be inhabited for centuries under Persians, Greeks, and Parthians. Alexander the Great died there in 323 BC, planning to make it the capital of his empire. But its power, its glory, its significance, all ended on that October night in 539. The name Babylon became synonymous with arrogance destined for a fall, with empires that defy the divine and are humbled, with human greatness that time reduces to ruins. Today, the archaeological site of Babylon lies about 85 kilometers south of Baghdad in Iraq. Excavations have revealed the foundations of the palace, fragments of the walls, and bricks with inscriptions from kings dead for millennia. The reconstructed Ishtar gates are in Berlin. Cuneiform tablets recording the daily life of that city are in museums worldwide. The canals Cyrus used to divert the river are still visible in aerial photographs. The Euphrates River still flows through the region, though its course has changed over the millennia. The plain is still hot and dry in summer, cold on October nights. The wind still kicks up dust from the ruins, and the memory of that night, preserved on clay tablets, on papyrus rolls, on Hebrew scrolls, on Christian codices, in printed books, and now in pixels on your screen, remains alive 2,563 years later. Babylon fell in a night. Its legacy remains forever. If this documentary illuminated your understanding of sacred history, subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. Each episode is a journey into the past to understand the present. Leave in the comments. What other biblical moments would you like to see reconstructed? Share with those seeking to know the history behind the faith. Until the next reconstruction.